Welcome, everybody, to another week of the Unforgettable Experiences live show, soon to be called the Event Innovator live show, since that is the podcast name that we're going with. We are so excited that you're with us here today. We are going live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. I am here with my friend, Dr. Carrie Rose. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent because I get to spend some time with you, Phil. This is going to be so good. I love every minute that we get to talk about online programs and live events and the world that we get to share with others in such a way that they get to create greater impact and kind of spread good vibes throughout their communities. So always excited.
Well, I am super excited for this episode in particular. You and I have been working on a program that we're hoping to release sometime in the next few months. And the process of working on that, I've learned a lot about you and the way that you think. And so those who don't know you, I just want to highlight a few things about Dr. Carrie Rose. She's not only a beautiful person to be with, she's wicked smart. Like, she has her PhD, but she's into the arts. She's very thoughtful, but also very caring about the way she does things. And one of the things that she does that most people don't do in the world of in-person and online courses is she's able to get people to actually complete those courses. Like 97% of people complete the courses that she designs, and industry standard, you're going to tell us in just a minute, is way lower than that. And we're going to learn from some of the things that she does and how we can make better learning events based on some of the things that she's done. So I want to just welcome you again to the show. Go ahead and tell us that stat. What is the average completion rate for courses? And then we'll get into this.
Yeah, the average completion rate for online courses is 3 to 5%. And so by FTC guidelines, I have to say 97% results are atypical, right? But I think what that tells us really is that what is possible compared to what is common, there's like a huge gap, right? And so we can actually focus on where we want to go and not where we've been, right? Like, we can focus on getting people real results inside of the programs that we are enrolling them into. And for me, that's amazing because I like to think about the world in terms of like, what would it look like if, right? Like, what would it look like if every person that was hurting in some way or another that purchase these online programs in order to have better health, better relationships, better businesses, better financial management. What if they actually had the results of the programs that they purchased, right? Like, what would end up happening in terms of their relationships, their livelihood, all of that, because we were able to do that for them. And I think of those things in terms of like that ripple effect and how can we really show up and serve in a greater capacity.
And the same thing is true if people get on a plane, a train, in their car, whatever, to get to our shows. They spend the money on hotels plus the cost of admission, and they're not getting the results. The pain is even worse. Maybe they had a good time, which, in the case of an online course, you bought it and you forget about it. Like, you spent the $100, the $300, the $2,000, whatever you spent. But if you didn't get the result, you've kind of forgotten about it because you've moved on. But there's still this ache, this pain. What are the things that you've noticed? Let's start with online courses because that's your expertise, and then we'll transcend over to events. Sure. What are the things that people get wrong that you think causes that 3 to 5% to be the normal outcome? What are a few of the things that they're doing?
Oh gosh, I think that's such a great question. And it's the least likely one that people are going to think about. Right? Because they're going to think about higher video quality, higher audio quality. Maybe they weren't a great speaker, or, there's lots of different things that could go into this, right? And there's tons of mitigating factors. I'm not going to say there's just one. But the thing that I find over and over again is that course creators are really giving people, right? They're saying, hey, I have knowledge, I have a heart, I care about somebody else. I'm going to put this together so that I can make a difference for them. And what they end up doing is they end up what I call kitchen sinking it. They're just going to put everything but the kitchen sink inside of their program. And so it's like everything that they know. And so they create like a 25, 30-hour program they get through. They're not going to understand if they get the results. And it also has a lot of information that they may or may not actually even care about. Like, for instance, I'm a walking internet movie database. If you want to play 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, we can go. But inside of an online program, that information does not go. And when I say it like that, it makes sense, right? It's like, of course that wouldn't go there. But what we need to think about in terms of here is like when you're creating an online program, or if you're creating an event, the same thing's applicable, or a speech for an event, the same thing's applicable. You have an outcome that you're trying to get them to, right? And so the outcome should be the intersection of your knowledge and expertise, what your market research is determining that people are going to purchase, right? And, what's really going to get them a good quality result inside of what I would call your learning ecosphere. And we can get to that in a minute. But if you're selling, that offer is that outcome. And your program should only be the amount of time it takes to get somebody an outcome. I think in the world of online programs, and even in general, we've decided somewhere along the way that, when we're giving time, we're giving value. And we really have to flip that conversation. Like, no, we're not giving you our time. We're taking your time. I'm taking my client's time. I'm taking my customer's time. So really what I'm looking at when building online programs is how can I get people faster results, right? Want to spend 20,000 hours with me, or 20,000, but 20 hours with me? No, I mean, if I could give them a wrench that fixed their problem, they take the wrench, right? And so like, really it's about understanding what that outcome is and giving them the shortest path of least resistance to having that outcome. And I think if more people can get that inside of their brains when they're setting up their programs, they're going to have a lot more impactful programs, right? And I think on the other side of that too, it serves both people, right? It serves the audience, and that it's like, oh gosh, I got to win, right? I bought this program because it would say it would give me this specific win, and I got this specific win. But on the other side of it too, if you look at things in terms of creating not just one program, but creating a series of programs, and it doesn't have to be all online courses. It could be an event, it could be a retreat, it could be a book that answers this problem, mastermind that answers this problem, a coaching program that answers this problem. But when you're looking at setting this up, you now have a series of offers. I think that people that get into online courses to just sell off a one-off program, it's a kind of a dangerous place, and I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend creating a business around your knowledge and then building all the different ways to support people around that, not just like, hey, I've got one course and let's see what happens and how many launches I can create, instead of like showing up to continuously serve these people.
Man, I love that. There's a phrase in jazz that less is more, and you don't need to show people every note. In fact, a great jazz musician knows what notes not to play. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say is a great course designer or educational event designer knows what not to say just as much as what to say. And I'm hearing you say something that I'd like you to make explicit. You need to understand your avatar, the person that you're serving, and what the pain points are in order to know what to include and what not to include. Talk to me a bit about how you get clear on that, because you've got a whole methodology. I've watched you do it, getting clear on who that avatar is that you're trying to serve.
Now, to be fair, that avatar you can find on digital marketers website. So I want to give them credit. I did work with them for a while. And so I was blessed to gain a lot of marketing knowledge over the course of a year. I mean, I've gained it from other places and other clients as well. But what I really like about the way that they do customer avatars is they're really focusing on the before and after, right? And so I would argue that you don't want just a customer avatar for your whole business, which is a lot of where people start. Like they just have a customer avatar for their business. I like to think about it differently because of that before and after piece that digital marketer showed me is, they are a different person when they start your first program than they are after they complete it. Hopefully you should be taking them on a journey of, what they need to know, what they need to do, and who they need to be, which is a whole different level of instruction, right? But more than likely you're a different person before you do your first event than you are after you do your first event, right? You've grown along the way, and the way you handle things is differently. And so if you should have an avatar for each of those, from like one program that goes A to B, another program goes B to C. Think about it like in terms of like going up a staircase here. And each one of those programs has a different avatar because they're before and they're after, for their feelings, for what they have, for what they know, for what they're doing, and for, how they approach even their day-to-day lives should be changed by the impact that you're creating inside of either your course or your event, whichever program you're looking at.
Absolutely. I love that. That is a continuously developing. But I think the way that you get to not throwing in the kitchen sink is who it is you're trying to serve and what is the need. Because
Mhm.
I know as an expert of sorts, it's tempting because I've got a book. I want to throw everything in there. Oh, but they
Right.
might need this. They might need that. I think that's probably a really dangerous word. Would you agree?
Might, yes. It can be. It can be. I was just filming a course with Get Response just here recently, and they have created a content monetization platform. So kind of like an LMS, but cooler. And one of the things that I really like about what they've added is they have newsletters built in. And so literally you can, when a lesson or a module is completed, you can send out an automation with a specific newsletter that a person would be ready for at that point in learning. So thinking about it this term, let's say, that if they finish this module, they might need this, might need that, might need this, might need that, but you don't know how to present it. You could present it in something simple like a newsletter and have like a CTA at the bottom of each of those things,
Mm.
letting them know that they could communicate with you if one of those things was of interest or one of those things they found helpful. But I think like when you say the might, like that would be a good place to put a might,
Yeah, you've
like feedback.
anticipated where they might be at that moment. Don't mean to keep using the word might, but
That
you're
works.
anticipating a need, but it's
Yeah.
not a need they have that's on the path that you're creating, but
Mm-hmm.
it could be a supportive thing depending on the questions that they're asking. So it sounds to me like it's a presentation thing. You're trying to create a streamlined course or experience that gets people from A to B or A to Z, however many steps there are to get there. What you're trying to do is avoid the distractions of all the extra things that might keep people from finishing. People like me who have ADHD, who get squirrelized,
Right.
and would go follow that rabbit trail and never get to the course, and therefore I would never complete it. And I think that's what does happen a lot of times at courses and events. So let's talk about events, because
Mhm.
events, it's even more tempting to throw in everything, like have options for everybody. And the larger the event, there's an
There's an
appeal
appeal
to
to
that,
that.
and
Mhm.
there's probably a legitimacy to that, right? But how would you think about this when you're creating, let's go retreat, small event, and we'll get bigger. Let's just go, step by step. How would you think about these principles when you're creating
Sure.
in-person events?
Sure. And just to say this, most of my event experience has either been on a stage as a speaker or in terms of like stage management for theater and opera. So like I come from different worlds here when looking at it or examining it. We're actually in the process of applying to create our first live event. So I'm going to be discussing that with you, I'm sure, at a later date. But if I were to look at it the same way, and because like it's tempting to throw everything at them, like you said, right? And it's tempting to promise big results. I think with the retreat, you have um, like an even better possibility of creating a really streamlined result, right, for a person. So again, we're just getting like really clear on the objective. Like a retreat for me comes with all the other like amazing things. Like you want the right atmosphere, you want the right food for the right people, you want like are there excursions, right? Are they going to go mountain biking during the day or ride horses, right? So there's like other elements in there that like kind of support a feeling of a retreat, right? And that feeling I think can carry people through as well. Again, I would just say to be focusing in on the one outcome. And the thing is, like when you try to put it all in, there's no place to go, right? And you're doing yourself a disservice as well as them, because like there's a level of mastery when you're teaching, and it doesn't matter the format on this. This could be speaking, this could be course, this could be event, retreat, whatever. But like it is, do you want to go, a mile wide and an inch deep, or do you want to go an inch wide and a mile deep? Okay. And so for me, I'm an inch wide and a mile deep, because I want for my own self, I want to master something, right? If I'm not really interested in it, then it's going to be like, okay, whatever. But if I'm actually interested, I want to know everything about it. And if it pertains to my business, my health, my well-being, whatever I'm focused on at that moment, I want to know everything about it. But I don't want to know everything this way. Like I want to actually be able to leave with something. So like if I went to a retreat or a business event that was specifically around creating video sales letters, let's say it that way, like one marketing aspect, right? I would want to know that by the time I'm leaving that retreat, that when I get back and I get on camera, I'm going to put out the perfect video sales letter. I don't want to be upsold on something else that's going to make my video sales letter better. But if I said, okay, I'm leaving this event and I'm going to have the perfect video sales letter when I get back and I hit that camera, and you offered me webinar creation, I'd want that too, right? It's a different type of mechanism, right? So if anyone's not familiar, is more like a video series that goes out through email. And this is more, oh gosh, I want to give him credit. The product launch formula, Jeff Walker. So if you're more interested, look into Jeff Walker's material on that. But there's a way to get out the information so that you're making sales through email, right? And so a webinar would be another way to sell a product or a program on a live event, right? But both of those kind of cover the same sort of problem, right? A problem that an online business owner would be having, which is like how to create and how to create the possibility for sales through these online mechanisms, right? To increase scale and profitability. But they're different things. So when somebody does something like that, I can feel that they have integrity, right? Whereas many times I've been at events and it's like, oh, well, you're trying to master this thing. Well, I'm going to sell you on this $50,000 program at the end of this event, which is how you actually master this thing. And it's like, ooh, eek. How do you like, I think there's got to be some level of integrity with how you set it up. And with how you set up the initial event too, to make sure that people understand that there's a build and that there are levels. So I just think that one's a little trickier, but maybe you've had different experiences than I've had.
No, I think what you just described sounds like the classic bait and switch. But, and I want you to answer this question in just a second, but I think if you've delivered on the promised transformation at the retreat, the workshop, the seminar, the event, and then say, if you want to go to the next step, this is one way to get there. We have this program for 50K, 25K, whatever the price point is. You've delivered on the promise, and hopefully you've over delivered on that promise so that they're like, if they need that, they're like, yes, sign me up because you've already given me so much. I need what's next. And it's not a bait and switch at that point. It's like, it's a chance to go deeper for a deeper transformation. So with that in mind, here's the question I want to ask you. What's the what between informational and transformational learning?
Yeah, it's that earlier I said, there's three different things that you're really solving for. What do they need to know? What do they need to do? And who do they need to be? Right? That B piece is what's usually missing. Most online programs have the what do you need to know? Some have the what do you need to do? And the who do you need to be just gets kind of left. And I'll say it like this. So I was in a branding course. Oh gosh, now it's been 12 years ago. God, it's so wild when you look back. How long have I been in online marketing? So I was taking a branding course 12 years ago, and inside of the program, so I'm trying to get started, trying to get set up. They're like, okay, this one lesson, you're going to need a tagline. You're going to need a website. You're going to need colors. You're going to need a social media presence. Go ahead and set that up, and I'll see you in the next video. And I was like, what? I mean, there were some like instructions in terms of like how to use, oh gosh, one of the website creation tools. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but I was like, other than that, there wasn't a whole lot to this, right? And I had to literally go, okay, Carrie, you know how to teach yourself, right? I had to go back into, I know how to teach myself anything because I know how to teach. So I'm like, okay, let me go compare and contrast two different websites from a user's perspective. So how would they look at this when they come to this website? How would they feel? How would they feel greeted? How would they feel like their next sort of engagement would be? I had to look at it in terms of like, okay, color palettes. What do different colors mean? What do they inspire? How do they make us feel? Where should I lean in? Not just because like, hey, I really like purple. Should I go with it? Like, what do they actually make? What does it actually mean? Right. And so I had to start examining things from other people's perspective. I had to start analyzing things. I had to start synthesizing data. And these are all things that like, they're the things that make it different. Right. So there's there's something in education called Hess's cognitive rigor matrix. I'm going to get doctor for like 2 seconds, but then we'll get back. But basically, she combined Webb's depth of knowledge and Bloom's taxonomy and kind of put it together with like a card deck kind of thing. And basically what it shows through this matrix is how much we're stretching the brain, right? And so I like to think of cognitive dissonance as like when your brain gets itchy, right? And so there's data that shows that you actually need cognitive dissonance. You need a little brain itchiness in order to be able to learn. If you don't have that, you can't learn, because like, I know what the things are that I know already. I don't need to relearn them. But in order to go to that next step, you need a bit of a stretch. And there's different levels and different ways of stretching, right? So like, even if I were to say compare and contrast two things, well, if you compare and contrast an apple and an orange, that's going to take a lot less brain power than it's going to, whatever the countries are, right? That's going deeper. So the deeper that we actually go with people changes how they are. It changes their ability to critically think about your topic. But like on a larger note, and this is just interesting, I'm writing a book on this at present, it actually changes the way that they're able to process and critically think about everything across the board, because we don't practice these skills enough. We're not taught to do them enough. The schools were set up by Ford so that we could be like construction workers and factory workers and that sort of thing. I've worked in a factory before. There's nothing wrong with that. But in order to like actually get to a level where we're processing in a different way or being a different person, back to the point that you were saying, we have to require people to think differently about our topic. And it isn't about imparting wisdom or telling them that they need to do these things. People will never get there by you saying it to them. I mean, like any parent knows this. Like, it inherently after having children. Like, I told you to do that. Where did it go? It fell on deaf ears and one ear out the other, right? It's not that. It's that we as people do not work that way. We have to require people to think differently, and then they give us a different version of themselves.
Interesting. You immediately brought back to me the summer that I spent roofing, and the head contractor showed me one time how to use the nail gun. And then when I went and picked up the nail gun the wrong way, he said, I told you how to do it. Give that back to me. Never let me touch it again.
So it's probably good, because I bent this finger in a factory bending metal.
Oh yeah. No, I would have hurt. I fell off the roof 3 times. And the third time was the time I said, this job's not for me. But here's a question though. I don't know what you think about learning styles and theories. I know there's different views on that in the educational world on how real are those different things, but I think there are different ways that we learn. So when you're designing a course or an event, how do you take into account the fact that people do actually internalize the things that you said, the information, the skills, and the being? Those aren't the words you use, but those are the thoughts. Yeah. We get to those outcomes in different ways.
So, okay, let's just... Yes. Okay. I actually wholeheartedly believe in that. And I'll say it the way that it makes sense to me, because I am at heart a statistician and a data lover. And so to ignore data is like, that's hard for me, but to revere it wholeheartedly is also hard for me, because data is created based on a bell curve. And so when they're saying that something isn't statistically sound, what they're actually saying is that that doesn't impact it has to impact more than like 98.5% in order to be statistically sound. Like, the measurement that we're looking at is extreme, right? And most people, when they're making decisions, they're making it on a simple split test level, like an A/B, like, did this go better? Yes, no, yes. Okay, I'm going to do it. My dad had a phrase that kind of makes it simple. He'd say, like, it's like chicken soup, it can't hurt. Right. So like, even if we don't know if chicken soup is really helping us based on all the math and numbers, we're not comparing chicken soup to Tylenol. When you get sick, what do you go to? Chicken soup, like, wholeheartedly. Right. So there is that, but there is also a ton of data that recommends differentiation by instruction, which is basically what you're saying, which is that people process differently, and thusly we give it to them differently. And I am a wholehearted supporter of that. So I know that my brain is a little what we'd call neurospicy, and I learn very different than other people. And so part of the reason I even got into this is because when I was younger, I had selective mutism, which you can't tell now because I almost won't shut up. But I barely spoke from when I was like 4 till 10. I was like as red, but like it was really, really quiet. And I also have dyslexia. And so I didn't even learn how to read until I was 10 years old. And I had a teacher take me from that to the highest standardized test score that school had seen in 1 year, just from caring and knowing the right strategies. And I wholeheartedly believe that the strategies that she was using on me had a lot more to do with what you're talking about in terms of making sure that people get it, right? In whatever way they can access it. And so as business owners, you have to understand your audience. Now, it depends on who your audience is, how hard you need to lean into which direction. But let's say it this way. 35% of business owners are dyslexic. So if you have an audience where you're teaching people that are business owners, which is a lot of event planners, right? I mean, like, am I off on that? I feel like it's a lot of events, at least that I go to.
Probably.
Probably. You got to imagine that 35% of your audience has dyslexia, right? And so that is a learning disability. And it also, the way that dyslexia comes, it comes with the side of usually left-hand predominant, usually auditory processing issues, and sometimes ADHD. Like, you get the whole combo pack when you get it. It's not like one thing or another. So if you're looking at that, if someone has ADHD, what do they need? Shorter bites, more action, more break time. Right? If somebody has dyslexia, we think that it's a visual impairment. It's not. It's an auditory processing issue. So dyslexics are actually like super talented visually. Like, I like to think of it, but like Iron Man. There's like a scene in Iron Man where he's using his gloves and he pulls it up and he's like moving things around like this. Dyslexics can do this without Iron Man technology. Like, we can flip things around. And so we need strong visuals. And that doesn't mean more text on screen in your presentation. It actually means, like, I love what they do in some TED Talks where the whole screen behind you is just an image, but the image evokes the emotion, and the emotion is what draws you in. And actually, people make more decisions based on emotion than they do on facts anyways, right? So, you have to think about those things. Now, for me, do I sit there and contemplate before creating an online course or creating a presentation or creating anything, like, where people are coming from? No. I assume mixed bag because if I were just to assume that there's nobody in the room with these issues, that's probably false. So I always assume I'm looking at a mixed bag here. How do I actually get it across? Right. And so there are things that you add in as a result of understanding that. And I think we talked about this one before. This one comes from my time in public education, but there's even something called a think, pair, share, which really attracts people that have like more interpersonal skills. Like, there's intrapersonal and interpersonal, but like a lot of people really need other people to process, and they need time to communicate with others. I think one of the things that you do with events is like really encourage the community building aspect of it. Like, it's not just deliver the information, but like, so for think, pair, share, it would be like, if I ask you a question, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about it. Then I'm going to give you a couple minutes to pair up with a partner and take turns discussing it, and then come back with what you found. Right. And it only takes a couple of minutes, but it's one of those extra, like, if you were just giving speeches, you wouldn't think about doing it, but it allows people a little bit of what feels like a break. And it allows people to like process that information differently than they would be if they were just staring at guy in front of stage all day,
Yeah. Well, most of us aren't looking for more information anyway.
Right.
We have access to the information. We're looking at the skills and who do we need to become to move into the future. And yet we do get there in different ways. I like the way you're thinking about it, of assuming you've got a mixed bag. So what's kind of the ratio that you're thinking? Like, I know I've heard the terms auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. I don't know if those are the right classifications of how to think about it, but if you were looking at an audience, a general audience, what are you assuming needs to be the mix of media that you're using and styles of teaching that you're using?
I would just continue to give them different options, absolutely. And you're not wrong on that breakdown. There's also multiple different kinds of ways to break it down, right? There can be hemisphere learning. There can also be like multiple learning modalities, right? And so multiple intelligences. There's like lots of different ways to look at it. And so it's more like just considering that when you're putting your presentations together, you're putting your events together, do do you just have the one thing? Right. And so like, I'll be inside a course and I can tell you instantly by looking at someone's course how they learn. And it's really interesting because we teach how we've been taught or we teach how we learn. It's usually one or the other. And so we have to really, it's more about being cognizant and being aware that there are other people in the room. So like, for instance, just to give you an example of hemispheric learning, I am a left brain Y. The reason I love data so much is because that's how I attach to it, right? If you give me statistics or dollar signs, now I understand that it's important to pay attention. If somebody doesn't do that and a whole day of training, I could sit there for 8 hours and smile because I'm nice, but I won't necessarily be able to apply anything because I'm still left there with the question of why? Why am I listening? What's in it for me? I don't understand yet. Right.
Okay.
And if people skip that part, I'm lost. Now, LaShawn, my husband, and my business partner exists on the other end of the spectrum, or like where I put the back end of the lesson. He is a do person. So if you don't have anything that actually, can get done as a result of being involved in the training, his brain's off, right? He'll be like doing other things that he needs to get done for other, for the business in different ways, as opposed to focusing on you. Right? Like if it's an online course, he'll go do the activity. If he hits a wall, he'll come back and try to relearn it or search up different YouTube videos. He's more about what are the outcomes, skip the noise, right? And so that's more of like hemispheric processing. There's also like multiple intelligences, which is this theory from Howard Gardner from the 1980s. And I love this one because it's just that everybody learns different and everyone's smart in different ways. It's really more about smart in different ways on this. And you get it from like the perspective, like I have an earned doctorate, but if my car broke down on the side of the road, I would not know how to fix it. I'd have to be calling someone. Right. And so that makes sense to us. Like I'm not smart in that way. There are people that are smart in that way and will always be way smarter than me in that. And it's not really about car versus book knowledge. It's more about like, people are interested in sports, they're interested in nature, maybe they are interested in music like yourself, right? And so when we're instructing, we have opportunities inside of what we're teaching to add references. You can add references to songs, or concerts that you've seen, or talk about like band breakups if you need to for a reference. I'll mention movies, right? Mention things inside of what you're instructing so that people are actually interested. One of my former clients, and I'll turn back to over to you second because I know I've got like all these different things, but one of my former clients that I absolutely adore, I got to sit down with Jay Baer when he was in town, years ago. And one of the things that he said that I thought was so prolific is that he changes his speech for each audience, right? Back to that customer avatar. But like if he is in a room full of people that have businesses selling hardware, he's not just talking about his content. He's talking about his content in relationship to selling hardware, right? So meeting people where they're actually at with your information as opposed to just like, here you go.
I'm curious about something, and I've not thought about it this way, but when you've got multiple speakers who are delivering within a course or an event, do you try to find people that approach it in a different way from your own style so that you are meeting the different learning styles? Because, Jay Baer inherently presents one way and Phil Mershon presents another way and Carrie, presents another way. Is that part of your thought process, or should that be part of the thought process? Because I've usually thought about it from a content expertise, not a delivery or outcome expertise, but it seems to me like that would be really smart to do so.
I really love the way you're going with this. I think from an online course perspective, if you have subject matter experts that are going to be inside of your program, you're going to need to build the material around what they're saying inside of those people are met, right? It's really hard to guarantee that the subject matter expert has that understanding because like you're saying, they're experts in that content. I love the way you're going with this with the events because in the perfect world, right? In a perfect world, each speaker would be able to do that all the way through, but that's not how it's going to happen. right? And so if you've got somebody that's more like, hey, get up out of your seats, we're going to go ahead and whatever the dance is, right, for the moment, or like, hey, go find 5 people who have the same shirt as you or the same tie as you, same colors, whatever, like, go, you know what I mean, like, get it to be more social. Or if it's more straight from the podium kind of a thing, yeah, mixing it up is probably going to create a different event experience. I would also say, again, an opportunity as the event planner is to require different things, right?
Mhm.
So like, if you wanted to require each speaker to bring something that, not just a takeaway, but an assignment, right? Like, now you know that those people that are in that, like, I'll say that LaShawn's quadrant, right? They are going to little thing that you could have, right? If you put it on yourself that you're going to make sure that each person understands why the topic that they're going to talk about is interesting, as the event planner, you can have the MC go ahead and cover that before they come up, right? If they don't have, or if you're really wanting to make sure to get the visual learners, maybe you could require that each slide deck has 5 just blank, just images that evoke emotions as opposed to words on screen, right? In, so that it's not really just about like the individual presenter and like banking on whether or not they know.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's super smart to bring our speakers on board with what we're trying to create. I think an MC could be a really critical component in that, because they can maybe complement the strengths and weaknesses of various speakers along the way. We obviously now have migrated into talking about a multi-day, maybe even multi-track event where it's not back to the course where there's like a single outcome, single avatar. Now we're in a situation where you got multiple avatars, multiple outcomes. You know, the larger the event becomes, the more everyone's talking today about you've got to personalize it. So each person can own their personal journey as they're going along. So it becomes more incumbent that you've got a variety of speakers who can address the different ways that people learn to keep them engaged. Because again, we're back to the start of this conversation. You've seen 97% completion rates, which obviously is not normal. But if we can see people sticking around till the end of an event, they're far more likely to get the outcome that was promised. And yet many events, people leave early. Lots of different reasons. They get bored. They have a conversation in the hallway that's more significant, which I'm all for that. Like that could be the best learning that happens at an event. I'm all for it. But are they sticking around for the promise that was there? Or have they bailed because you haven't really thought about the way people are getting results, getting the learning, the benefit? And I think, you know, having practical outcomes is a huge one. People go to events because they want to learn a new skill. They want to make new connections. They want to become someone better. And so I think all those things are super important. Any response to that? Sorry.
Oh, no, absolutely. Actually, you know, I have been in the hallway with the with the socializing quite a bit during events, but it also depends on what my role is. So usually when I'm at events, I'm one of the speakers, right? And so like it's the information may or may not be for me. And so I'll try to go in when they're either to be supportive of friends or to pick up on the information that I need. And then there's usually some business conversations that are happening behind the scenes too. What I've also found too is like, you know, some of your audience leaves on Sunday. You know what I mean? Like it's the last day of the event. They've already got tickets, their airplane tickets out earlier so they can get back to start the work week. So I think it's like, you know, kind of to your point, like if you're looking for like when people are actually in the room, making sure to plan around when they're really going to want to be in the room and what's drawing them back in.
So I want to get back to this promise of completion and getting the value out of it, because I think that's one of the best things we can learn from you as a learning expert. You've addressed the fact that we need to not overwhelm them with too much, keep them on a streamlined facet. What are either some of the other mistakes people make, or what are some of the superpower things that you've learned that smart event and course designers implement these things that maybe most people miss?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, definitely it is always about that outcome learning. And honestly, when I started getting completion rates that high, it was about the outcome and just focusing on the science of learning. So some of the things that we were talking about earlier, That is what got it for clients before anything else. Now, I wrote an entire book on different marketing things that can be done in addition, but I really do think it's right information, right time, right presentation, right, is going to actually make that difference. And completion only matters when it is done in an outcome driven way. Okay. And I want to be really specific about that, because if you put a 22-hour program together, it doesn't matter if they finished it, right? Like, could they have gotten their outcome by hour 5 and peace out, right? Like that's a possibility. So that's something to consider. What I really like is like a choose your own adventure kind of a thing. We have to remember that adults are self-selected learners, right? And you kind of get that when you're going into events. Like, a lot of events have different learning paths and they offer them. And I really like that. It's like, okay, well, I can choose that I'm an agency owner, so I need to go on this agency owner path today, in order to make sure that I'm getting the things that are really focused in and targeted for me. But one of the things that I was just talking about in recording that course with Good Response is that you can use automations and autoresponders inside of your existing program in order to make other and additional offers to give people that right on time learning experience. Right. And so, like, here's the thing. So kind of back to what you were saying before about events, right? If they've delivered on the promise, there's ways to go deeper. And so I want to really make that part clear before I say this next part, because I've different clients that are consultants over the years. And some of them know that they get better results in person with people. They can fly in, sit at a table with 5 people that are employees at the business and get like huge results in like a couple of days. And they've done it over and over and over again. And we may take that information and we may wholeheartedly do our best to put it inside of these programs, right? But it's still missing that piece of when you're instructing someone, and I'm sitting with you right now, I can go, okay, you're nodding, you're getting it. Or I could see your face and go, you are absolutely not getting what I'm saying right now. And it is just that human to human connection of the being in the room part, right? And it's being in there with people where, as a consultant, you might be able to, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm hearing what you're saying. Now we can put it together and collaborate to create something even better from all of these different perspectives and a consultant is going to be able to do that differently inside and outside of an online course, the online course being static. So some of the things that I have my clients do is like, hey, this part's tricky. If you'd like to go ahead and get on a phone call to discuss it with me, here's a link to my call, or I have designed a workshop around this. If you want to go deeper, we can. Here's the opportunity to do that. And you can do it like just through a text page in your course. You can do it through, as I said before, an automation that's linked to a specific lesson. So it goes out in the email format if you want to keep it separate, but make it sure that it's like timely and delivered to them when they're going to need it. And so I think really thinking about things holistically through the perspective of your client or customer is going to give you those opportunities to make programs even better for them. Because really, we're not just trying to sell them on our next thing. That's really not it. We're trying to make sure that they're taken care of. And that taken care of is going to look different at different enrollment levels, right? And so providing those opportunities, or maybe it's, hey, I know people get stuck at this one part. I'm going to go live on this day to talk about it. And I just sent that email out. So it could go out through that automation. It could go out through the autoresponder, or, hey, I've been getting some feedback about this. Here's a webinar I'm doing with Phil. I'm going to bring him in to talk about events, even though that's not the course, but you guys are asking about it, right? And now I can give them more timely. So it can work with like existing programs to monetize, and it can also work with just, non-existing value add. That the more opportunities that you have to add value after you, better it's going to be for your clients and your business. And I'll say it this way: never sell something you can't deliver on, right? So when you're creating a program of any kind, it's, is this the right thing for me? Is this the right thing for my students or my clients? Is this the right thing for this content? Whatever that, those are the client is, how is this going to impact these 3, right? And if you're not like somebody who can show up weekly on a live, That would be too much for you. You don't want to go ahead and promise that up front. But if you know when they get to the spot in the course, they're going to need it, I'm just going to throw that in. They're not expecting it. They're going to see it like a present, not like, oh gosh, this person didn't follow through or doesn't do the thing they said. They're going to see it like they actually care and here's something else.
And I'm taking a course from Mark Schaefer, and he offers up front. He said, look, after week 2 or session 2, it wasn't week 2, but session 2, I've found most people really struggle with this one idea. So here's what I'm going to do. I've got a link here. You can schedule a 30-minute call with me, and we'll get on and we'll figure this thing out together. And he did a couple things by doing that. It felt like an extra gift because I know his time he bills out at whatever, $250 an hour or something like that. So it feels like a gift of his time, but it's also setting me up for success of, oh, if he's going to invest that kind of time in me getting here, then it's going to be even better I want to finish the whole thing. So he actually triggered me to want to finish the whole thing by giving me that gift. It was baked in his plan, right?
Right. Absolutely. No, that's absolutely genius. And you can do it that way too, and it could be like, hey, I'm just having a surprise group coaching call. Questions ahead of time. I'm going to pop on. We're going to take care of everything you've got going on right now. It's so easy to just give those elements and build it in wherever, you can, just again, thinking about your people and what they actually need.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant right there. When you are the expert, you kind of know where people are going to get tripped up. And if you can build it in such a way that you provide those solutions. Now, obviously a multi-track, multi-day event is a lot harder to anticipate those things, but I think still the more we can become experts at creating that, choose your own adventure for people and anticipating the problems and having solutions along the way, the better we're going to serve them, and we're empowering them to own their own journey and hopefully stick it out. Like they're going to come back to you and reference you if they completed your course and got the value from you. So it's really a smart business move to get people to finish it instead of just having another shelf course, course that's stuck on the shelf or stuck in the locks of your computer that you don't look at ever again. Feel guilty over when you see it's like, oh man, I haven't finished that yet. Oh shoot. And then eventually you hide it because it makes you feel so guilty. Right.
There's a couple of things that you said in there that I want to touch on. So let's see if I can remember these. One, for the event creation component of it, you can actually add that as a question or as a filter that you're looking at or looking through this at, based on an understanding of like, am I giving them everything they need? Or like, what is a barrier that's going to appear for them? Like, are there any unseen barriers that we have not addressed? So something like that. And then the other part too, when you said like, oh, it's your content, and I think that leaning back to teach what you know, and you shouldn't teach what you don't. Sounds wild, but some people do create courses not necessarily based on what they know. And I think that it's a different element, right? So even when I started, like I wrote my doctoral dissertation on professional development, it's literally like, in academia, if you write your dissertation on a topic, they're like, okay, you can actually call yourself an expert in that thing now. Right. And they don't usually give that out. You're like, oh, you're not, I'm not an expert in everything academia. I'm not, but professional development, that's my thing. But even then, and even after building a process based on over 500 different research studies, right? So I'm backed up by data. And even then, I did not create my course right away. I worked with individuals one-on-one to make sure that they understood that I was teaching them. I worked with them one-on-one to make sure that they understood the process. I looked for their face. I looked for their feedback, before deciding that this is, yes, they're getting it. Yes, it's 100% the way I need to go with this. Right. And so I think that there's like an element of that too. Like, if you've done it already so many times, you've consulted on it already so many times, then yeah, sure, go ahead, make the course. I'm not going to say don't do it, but if you haven't had that experience yet, a beta program is great for you, or one-on-one consulting is great for you, one-on-one coaching, until you like actually feel like, yes, people can get results from the process I'm delivering on.
Yeah, it's funny with AI, it's even easier now to create courses around something that you sort of know something about. Now, it's one thing to, like, if you were to upload your book into ChatGPT and say, help me find the course that's in this book. That's one thing. And that's actually kind of cool. And that I've actually been doing some of that, saying, because it's not obvious to me what the right modules would be. And it's sped up the process for me. But if you said, help me design a course based on the knowledge of Phil Mershon and Carrie Wilson, Carrie Rose, then all of a sudden it's like, well, that's disingenuous, but someone could do it, right? Because that knowledge is out there, and that's scary. And I think people do sometimes step into it.
I think to some degree. So I use AI a lot. And I use AI a lot. There's a level of discernment that you have to have, right? And so if I feed it this, could it give me like an overall breakdown that I could change into lessons and then just write the way I would teach, right? And even then, like, it's just so different from where I would actually go. But I think what it's good for is it's good for non-examples too, right? And so looking at it like this, like a non-example is the way of not doing it, basically, in education. So like I try to learn from people's skin knee. I also try to decide or make decisions based on sometimes what I know I don't want. And I know that sounds wild, but like I might not know what I want. But if I were looking at a diner menu and I was like, oh, do I want cottage cheese? Do I want applesauce? And I don't feel like any of those things, right? You could just like get it out of here, right? Or a Fridays menu, something like Cheesecake Factory. Those things are so big. But you start like narrowing it down, right? And so the AI tool is giving you a copy of everything that ever was in terms of access. And that's actually kind of scary. And I got this, I believe, listening to John Benson. So I just want to give him credit for this. But, he's saying basically like, if you're using AI, you are taking the tool that knows everything that's on the internet. But do you trust everything that's on the internet? And is everything on the internet right? And is everything on the internet for you? And is everything on the internet for your audience? And so like, there's got to be lots of discernment when you're looking at it and when you're using AI. And there's definitely ways to speed up your process and prompt it in such a way that you can get to your end result faster. And I've taken a day's worth of work and turned it into 45 minutes, not on course creation for my clients, but on doing things for my business, because I kind of using it to prompt in ways that, I would have had 8 hours of thinking before, maybe not 8 hours of doing, but 8 hours of thought process around it, and gotten there a lot faster to get results. But I'd still make sure to like use that human understanding and also really, really think about it in terms of what does your client actually want? Like, even if it's giving you like, these are possible ideas for my program, like, okay, yes, but like one thing you have to think about too is where are they coming from and where are they starting from? And that's that avatar understanding, right? But you might have to give them, knowledge to even have them be ready for what you're doing, right? And so that's content ahead of time prior to purchase, right? In order to make sure that they're educated to the point of what they need to start your course. So just things to consider with AI.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today. Carrie, I really appreciate you taking an hour to be with me. You had a free offer or a free resource that you wanted to make available. It's the link is coming across the screen, but if you're listening to this later, it's markettheory.us/free-guide. And I'll put that in the show notes for those of you who don't remember things like that while you're driving or doing the dishes or whatever you're doing while you're listening to this. But tell us a little bit more about what that is. What is the free guide that they're getting access to?
Yes. So they are getting a free guide that's going to give them an overview of course creation. So it doesn't give you like everything. I'm not going to make those kinds of promises, but it might give you some steps and tools and techniques to get you started, so that you can at least kind of sit with different ways to approach it.
Fantastic. All right. As I've told you at the start before we went live, I always finish with a signature sign off. To get there, I need you to reflect on this conversation, Carrie, and give me 3 words, at least one of which needs to be emotional. And then I'm going to play for a minute and close out our show with that. So give me 3 words, please.
I feel like I'm always going to get emotional because I feel like one of the things that unites us is that we honestly care about people. And so like really so I'm going to say heartfelt. I'm going to say connection, and I'm going to say possibility.
Ooh, I like that. And because you've got a musical background, give me a key and tell me major or minor.
Oh gosh, I don't have it like that.
Right. Well, you know your notes. Give me a note.
C.
All right. C.
Major. I don't like minor
C
notes.
major. You like major chords. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's good. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and get set up here. I'm going to change the setting and I'll have you go mute and we'll play a brief moment here. All right. I never know. It's always fun, but thank you for giving me a starting place. Carrie, really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you for being with us. Is all your contact information going to be on that site at markettheory.us, or where would you want people to follow you?
But LinkedIn, Dr. Carrie Rose, Instagram, Dr. Carrie Rose. Yeah, it's pretty easy to find me on the internet.
Look for Dr. Carrie Rose on the internet and get that free resource. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Phil. Take care, everyone.